please let me introduce to you our first speaker, who's a UX strategist and researcher with over 30 years of experience. It's even hard to say it. It's so inspiring and impressive. And yeah, I would like to introduce to you Meena Kothandaraman.
Are awesome.
Let's go.
Can you give him a round of applause for saying that last name really well? How are you guys doing? I'm trying to look at everybody with all the lights. Thank you so much for, let me grab this clicker. Thank you so much for being here, guys. I just want to also say thank you to the Amuse staff because everybody has just been fantastic. I want to say thank you to the coffee people outside because they have literally been keeping me going. It's been amazing. This woman made this coffee and I was just like, I wanted to hug her, and I think that would have been a bit odd. But, and then she made me another one, and then I really wanted to hug her, and then I just decided to step away. But I'm so pleased to be here with all of you. I have a bit of a talk that's going to be possibly a little like you might go, what is she saying? But I actually want you to challenge me back a little bit because I have a message sort of that I want to deliver to everybody. I want to see how it goes over. So I'm going to talk to you first about the experience last night. How did you guys feel about last night's party? That means many of you are hungover. That's a really bad woo. Can we try that again? Right? There we go, there we go. I know, the coffee's kicking in slowly, right? I want to ask you a favor. I want you to just, I'm going to take a precious minute of my time here, and I want to ask you to help me. I want you to think in your mind, if you want to close your eyes, if you think better when you close your eyes, I want you to think about products, services, experiences that you have had that just delight you, that just blow your mind away, and that just leave you feeling so happy. I'm going to give you a quick minute. Think it through. Think about your day. Think about what you do when you get up. Think about what you do when you grab that phone. What all do you access? What do you do with it? Where do you go? Who might you talk to? How might you talk to them? Think about sort of the details of your day. Maybe you leave to go to work. Maybe you move rooms to go to work. Maybe you don't work. Maybe you just sit back and relax. It's not such a bad thing, right? So take that for a moment, and then I'm going to ask you all, if you can and if you are able to, I'd like you all to stand up. Now, here's what I'm going to ask you. How many of you had more than 10 that just popped into your head? If you did, sit down, please. Okay. Many of you are still standing. How many of you had between 5 and 10? If that's the case, please sit down. How many of you had between 3 and 5? If that's the case, please sit down. Gosh almighty, how many of you had under 3? Please sit down. Why did I ask you that? So the challenge here is just think about the number of products, the number of services, the number of experiences we go through on a day-to-day basis. Every day we are interacting with things, we do so much, and yet you cannot come up with more than 10 that just fly into your head, and you're challenged by that. That is the puzzle for me. Why is it so difficult? It should not be this difficult, right? We should really be able to rattle them off the top of our head, and yet we're not able to. That's the puzzle to me. But the reality is actually, experiences, generally speaking, can be a struggle. How many of you, if I ask the converse question, which is, how many of you sometimes when you're actually surprised by something, you have this moment of, oh my God, that worked. That's amazing. How did that just happen? And you put the phone down after talking to a customer service representative, and you're just like, I didn't have to spend an hour. That took only 2 minutes. How did that magic happen, and what is this witchcraft? We sort of ask ourselves these questions, but the problem is why, Why are we doing this? It's 2022. We've been around the block, people. We shouldn't be having these kind of discussions. But let's take that a little bit more deeply from the organization's point of view. Understanding those moments, understanding exactly what happens in those moments when somebody is unhappy, when they are, disgruntled, when they want to just slam or throw their phone out the window kind of nonsense. What happens is we need to sort of introspect in that in an organization. But when you need to do that, what happens is you also need resources. You need budget, you need time, and you need people. And as we all know, there's limitless budget, there's limitless time, and there's tons of people, right? Okay, that didn't go over well. So, organizations, generally speaking, what we want to hear from them is they want to actually address these moments. But here's the thing, they have to take care of people. They have to take care of the people, the consumers, the people out there. They really want to take care of those people, but we also hope they want to take care of you, the people who work in the company as well. There's a balance that they have to strike. Both sides have to be taken care of. You cannot simply focus on one without focusing on the other. We're hoping for a balance, though. We're hoping, and that's why I sort of put "sort of" in brackets. But I think we can all agree that when you have these kind of moments, let's say my friend Ben has a challenge with something that he's dealing with on his phone, he's trying to figure out how to pay his credit card, and it's not the button, he's hitting it, it's not going through. We realize that in that moment of time, that company is going to wonder, what was Ben going through? What exactly happened here? What was going on? There is a steady stream of questions that need answers. I think we can agree on that regardless of what discipline we're in, regardless of what industry we're in, it doesn't matter. There will always be questions that need answers. Let's talk about the reality of how we get those answers. This is where it starts to get a little ugly. The questions, again, are often about people and product. I think you'll agree with me. We either wonder, what was Ben doing in that particular moment? Or what was Olden doing in that particular moment? Why were they doing this? Where exactly were they? Were they, on a train traveling? Were they in their car? What was going on? They have questions about the people. What were they exactly trying to do? What was the task that they were trying to accomplish? But then we also have questions about the product. What version was it? What exactly was the task that they were doing? Did they get to the point of checking out and actually hitting, yes, I want to purchase this beautiful Sonos speaker, and they couldn't do it? What exactly happened, and where exactly were they? We realize that those two are sort of interlinked. But here is the first problem I'm going to present to you. Organizations conflate their understanding of people with their use of product. So if I am a company, let's say I'm a credit card company, I look at Zoltan and I say, you know what? If I really want to understand who he is, all I care about is how he uses my product. That is his world. Now, I don't know about you guys. I don't go up to people and go, hi, my name's Meena, and I have an Amex Platinum. I don't do that to people. It's not how I talk to people, right? You don't limit yourself to that one dimension. It's that one dimension that they're interested in. But just think for a moment if they understood more than that one dimension, what the potential could be. But in doing this, organizations just generally disconnect themselves from people. I ask you to think about your own organizations. How often do you really try to understand people? And I mean people, not just how they use your product. I mean people in general. Who are these people? What are they doing? What is important to them? How can we really learn from them and give them a chance to emote back to us? Because what happens is instead of focusing on the people, we actually just focus on the product, which is really disappointing. Because guess what? You lose something very big. You not only lose connection with people, you actually start to believe. Don't forget, we still have questions that need answers, guys. We haven't forgotten about that yet. We start to base our answers on good enough, intuition. You're nodding. I heard the right? Yeah. Let's get an amen on that, right? So literally, you start to base it on gut, intuition, I think so. You know what, we're just going to go with this. Assumptions, all sorts of stuff like that that sort of are good enough. But just think about that. Good enough actually acts as a proxy. as a proxy to feeling connected. But the problem is what do you think the confidence is in those answers? It's pretty low, because you're not entirely sure, but you're going to give it a whirl anyway, because what's a few 100K, right? It's not a big deal. But what we realize is when you have reduced connection, when you have reduced confidence, it shows in our products. I personally believe that's why many of you struggled to think about great products. I think that's why you were like, oh, what is a good product? Like, what do I use and what do I love? You think about that, and yes, you might say, well, that's a flawed study, Meena, and you're actually right. But truthfully, we shouldn't be struggling this much, but yet we are, and we don't feel that sense of connection with things. We don't feel that sense of like, wow. We don't get delighted all the time. For the number of products and services we use, we should be delighted all the time. We really should. So now what happens is the product acts like a barrier. It stops us, actually, from really trying to take care of those two groups, not only the consumers, but also the people in the company. I like to call them creators, whatever they are, whoever they are. So now the big question: how can we deepen connections, and how can we actually bolster confidence when really designing anything? How can we do any of this while still forging our connections with the people that we serve, with the people that make the stuff that we put out there, and actually still have confidence? I basically want a utopic world. It's sort of doable though, guys. You might think, oh, that's nice, Meena, you've smoked something really cheap early in the morning. Not a good thing, right? Yes, I know, but I'm telling you, it's possible. It is possible, and you do this in a very specific way. You actually just do qualitative research. That is the service that qualitative research can actually provide to the organization. Just a quick show of hands, how many of you are researchers here? Just so I know. Do I have some peeps? Yeah, I got some peeps in the house. Okay, so fantastic. So you know what I'm talking about here, and you might even feel a little pinch. I ran a workshop day before yesterday, some few weeks ago, I don't know. I can't tell time anymore, but I ran a workshop, and it was very sweet at the end of the workshop, and I've heard this at several of the workshops. It feels a bit therapeutic. Why? Okay? So a quick introduction to Twig and Fish. Twig and Fish is a micro-agency based in Boston in the United States. I am a Canadian Bostonian. I'm a very proud Canadian, and I live in Boston. I've been there for a long time. I'm co-founder of this agency with Zarla Ludin, and the two of us really put our heads together and thought, you know what, we need to do a better job of telling stories. We need to do a better job of positioning qualitative research to succeed in organizations. We need to do a better job of showing what power it has to be sort of leveraged as a strategic tool, and how to actually practice it. All great and fine to be talking about all this stuff, right? But how do we do it? Just a caveat, we're not a pub. A lot of people ask us, are you a pub? Maybe. 2.0. I'm thinking about it. But in the meanwhile, we're a research agency. I did disclose to my workshop participants that I wanted to be a bartender when I graduated high school. My mom was none too pleased. So I want to just cite a quick study here, and you'll notice this is a different slide texture from the slides that I'm using. This is from a woman, her name is Veronica Nakib, and she presented at User Research London just a month ago. So just so you know, these are very recent stats. And she did a very interesting study with 1,000 people. For now, I'll just give you 1,000 people across 9 markets. She is going to be publishing these results more formally very soon. But what I thought was fascinating was in her presentation, she had done this entire study, and it was very extensive. And what she wanted to do was really understand, how do people trust what comes back from research projects on a scale of 1 to 10. The number I want you to take away is that 33%. That's it. Apathetic really means, yeah, whatever, right? In layman's terms. Yeah, whatever. Not helpful. Trusting is helpful. But 33% is a shockingly low number. Maybe we can do a little bit better. And when she presented this, I did ask her for permission to actually share this information. I'm looking forward to her whole report, and we've already started a lot of discussions on this, because this actually piggybacks on a study we did. I chose to put this in here because it's more recent. So I'm going to share with you some thoughts. What I did, and title of the topic was Challenging Norms, I'm going to go through norms that I see all the time. I want to, and if anybody feels comfortable, if you see the norm and you feel like, yeah, been there, done that, go ahead and put your hand up. It just helps me sort of know if I'm connecting with you guys at all. But I want you to look for takeaways and sort of reflect on what your organization does. Here's my first overarching norm. Research in general doesn't expose the effort it takes to actually get answers that are high confidence via a credible approach. Research teams don't generally say, this is literally how much time it's going to take. They just get shoved into a corner. You've got 2 days to get this done. I see people laughing in the middle, right? You know this is reality. You get pushed into a corner and you have to respond. Let's talk about this. Structure and transparency lead to confidence and connection. You're going to hear me say confidence and connection more times. If we all had a shot glass, we would be drunk under the table first thing in the morning. But it's the truth. We have to put it out there, guys. For my researchers out here, we need to put it out there exactly how much work it takes. I am going to drive that one home because that is really important. The more we hide about the work that we do, the less we help ourselves, and quite honestly, the less we help everybody around us. So I'm going to use a case to keep going through this. I'm smiling actually, Zoltan, because this is a similar, same agency or same government basically that I used last time I was here at Amuse, but it's a different study that we did for them. But it's easy because I'm allowed to share this information publicly. It's for the city of Boston, boston.gov, and basically we were asked a question. The city of Boston actually sought to understand how information in the organization and in the city with the residents, everybody, because anybody who works in the city of Boston has to live in the city of Boston. Basically, how did they obtain information, especially from particular cultural groups? How do these people actually get access to and seek information? And even more importantly, why weren't some residents actually using the City of Boston website? So you might think, oh, this is a really simple question, Meena. Unfortunately, it is simple to some extent, but it's not in some other extent. But it's just, I'm using it sort of as an example, if that's fair to say. So let's keep going down these norms. The norms, well, many people don't have an established language to start answering these questions, right? So I do this very often in my workshop. I ask people, do you have an established language in your organization? Do you have a process? Do you have words that people use because they know the research team uses them? Does everybody use those words? Does everybody know exactly what those words mean? It doesn't mean that they have to do the work. It means that they have to respect the work. So I ask that question, and guess what? Most of the time, nobody puts their hands up. Nobody has anything, because we're sort of all running amok, a bit haphazard. So that is my first norm. So what I'm going to do with you is share the 5-phase learning process that we have. If you don't have language, I ask you to take this language and start using it. Start using it in your own work. It's very simple. They're simple words. Align is that first phase where we get all question intent together. What are the questions people have? If people send you questions by email, don't accept them. Warning, it's a trick. Don't do it. Don't do it. So you want to make sure that you get and unpack and understand what those questions are. Once you do that, and once you ascertain what the learning scopes are and the learning objective is, then it's pretty simple, right? Then you execute a plan. You figure out the people you need to talk to. You put a protocol together. You pull it all together in a way that starts to be structured and bring more credibility to what's going on. Your third phase is gather. With no big surprise, if you've got a good plan, that pretty much means you can actually go ahead and just get data on that. So execute on that plan, make it happen, bring it all together. So we want to get people involved there as well. I'll talk about involvement very soon also, because everybody is involved all the way through. They don't own the burden of the process, they are simply involved. We have analyzed. Pretty simple. You get data, you gotta deconstruct it, right? Makes sense. We all know that. And then finally, you have to apply. Not present, not report, not Dropbox, not Drive. because I know you're tempted to, we have to apply whatever the findings are because they have to go somewhere. They actually have to make it somewhere, right? Because otherwise, that's not very helpful. So here what we have then is we create a language. We create a language around gathering information and making sure that we socialize it so that human learning is socialized. It becomes a norm in the organization with language that people use. It's really important to note also that that word research is overused. People just think research is the act of asking a question. I just went through a whole lot more. That's all part of the process of research. Expose the effort. So what I'm going to do is take you through each one of these phases with that case, with the City of Boston, and give you sort of, again, a norm that we have noticed, and pull back and say how we've addressed it, just so you sort of see how this comes together. The question to answer from the City of Boston, if we had to really dial it down to the basic question, was, does the City of Boston website create a sense of trust and confidence? That's really what they wanted to learn. But it quickly turns into a very different situation. Most often, if they ask that question, what do you think happens? They send the designers out and say, go forth and conquer and create trust and confidence. You have the power, you know what to do. And I honestly cry for my designer colleagues because I don't know what to tell you. They are thrown under the bus more often than I can tell. But they're asked these ridiculous asks as if they can conjure up trust and confidence. I know exactly what's going on and I can do this. It's really ridiculous if you think about it. I know designers are brilliant, but at a certain point, they start to fall apart and it gets frustrating. We haven't even talked about what the affect that has afterwards. That's a different study, that's a different discussion. And if anybody wants stats on that, I have it. But basically, typically, they would say, designers, go forth and do this for us. Create this for us, and then come back and just show us that it generates trust and confidence now. Really unfair ask. Or the other way that they do it, which I always smile, is they'll just send out a survey, because why not? So what we needed to do was, as I mentioned, unpack the question. So let's start with that first question. Does the City of Boston website create a sense of trust and confidence? Here's the problem. As we've already just sort of joked about, answering that question is really binary, right? Yes, it does. No, it doesn't. So there's really little contribution to improvements there. We're not gaining anything, guys. We're not learning anything. So that close-ended question takes us nowhere. But maybe we can turn it around a different way. Then they'll say, well, how can we do this? How can the City of Boston website generate a sense of trust and confidence? Sounds great and everything, but again, you're putting that onus on the designers. You're saying, okay, how can we do this, guys? We'll all look at each other with nice empty stares, drink a little bit and go home, right? Can't do much. But the problem is we don't have a definition of trust, and what we need is to deconstruct these big terms called trust and confidence, and we need to be able to deconstruct them, share the attributes of what does it mean to trust? What does it mean to have confidence? And what happens in these moments is a lot of times the information that you garner in these meetings are based on intuition, are based on guesses. That's what we end up with. So it doesn't really help us. Low confidence, and most importantly, the way I as a researcher like to communicate this to designers, you're not primed for ideation. You don't have everything you need. You are out of it right now. You need to get some stuff, whatever that stuff is. But what if we opened it up a little bit more? Maybe we ask the question, how do residents determine if information is actually trustworthy from the city? Let's start opening it up a little bit more. Getting a little warmer here, right? Now we're starting to get a definition of trust as it relates to city resources. We start to get stories about city interactions. Okay, that's getting us a little bit warmer, right? And now I can feel like, okay, at least then I get a sense of what confidence and trust are from people who are interacting with the website. Okay, so we're getting warmer, right? But what if I opened it up even more? What if I just said, how do residents determine if information is trustworthy and high confidence? What if I just sort of open it up a little bit more? Then I truly get a definition of trust and confidence, open it up, and then can always come back to how people learn from the city. Now we're getting warmer, right? We're getting way warmer. In fact, we're pretty hot. So here we have the highest confidence, but unpacking that question is important to do. I would say it's imperative to do, because otherwise, it's so much faster to just dump it on the designers and just say, come up with something, guys, you're awesome, we love you, and walk away, right? So unpack that confidence, unpack the existing knowledge that the team has, reveal the gaps in the human story. If you don't reveal those gaps, if you don't show the team that they don't have something, or that they're basing it on assumption, or that they're basing it on intuition, you don't have a lot. So good to do that right up front. Let's keep moving. So now you have a scope, you have a clear question, you know what the ask is. Now our next step, well, the norm is often that we know the question, we just run off, design a study, and researchers do their job because we are good at our job. But here's the problem. Running away is not the right thing. We have to keep everybody with us. They have to listen. They have to listen to the story. They have to listen to what's going on and absorb that human story, and that's when the wheels and the mice start running. All they have to do is listen, and listen well. Listening is hard, by the way. If any of you, you know you've been in a day-long research session, you've listened to lots of stories, at the end of the day, you are exhausted. It is tiring. But that is hard work that has to be done by everybody. It's not enough for me to tell you how awesome The Lion King is on Broadway. You have to go see it yourself because it does something to your insides. And that's the inside stuff that makes a difference in your product. That is the connection you're creating. So what we do is, at this moment, we don't run away. Very briefly, we talk it through very quickly. And for those in my workshop, this probably looks very familiar. Who are we learning from? Let's talk about it. What kinds of data are you looking to obtain that are really going to answer this question? How are we going to do this? The approach, a bit of the dynamic and the context, sometimes the method as well. And then finally, just have a quick note on what your rationale is. Why did we decide to do it this way? Again, when you make things transparent, it's so much better. Now, I'm going to add one more layer to this. That first row is for the ideal. It's for the right way to do the study because, again, if we don't tell people the right way to do it and we apply constraints even before they're given to us, they'll never know, guys. They'll never know. They'll never be able to plan for it. You're basically being unfair to the stakeholders that you serve as well. So be open and say, this is the right way to do this, guys. They will apply their constraints, and then you're going to give them the adjusted study. But you're going to tell them what they've lost. Because we cut A, B, and C out, we are going to lose this. Is everybody good with it? Are we all good? Yeah? Okay. And then you move on. But you've made it public, and you've done your job in making sure you're communicating. Because that next time, that stakeholder, when they're doing their budget planning, might go, it was only 10K more. I can do it. Let's do it. Let's do it the right way. Because at the end of the day, they too want to do their job well. I believe that. Present the ideal, and then the adjusted study. Please call out what is lost. Don't run away and do this on your own. That is a huge mistake. It is our responsibility as researchers to be as transparent as possible. The next norm. Participants then, we are now in that phase 3 gather, participants are now given a chance to answer. Now, if I just went up to this lovely gentleman sitting here and I just said, tell me what trust is. What do you think trust is? How do you feel this morning? Tell me what trust is. He's going to go, trust. And you're like, I knew I was going to get asked this question this morning and I should have been ready for it. And I mean, how many of us can do that, right? How many of you are thinking about what really makes me trust first thing in the morning? Let me think about it, right? It doesn't work that way, guys. We don't think about these things. So we have to make sure we give participants a chance to reflect on their own answers. They need time to think about their own data. We have to be really fair to them. So make sure that they can think about their own realities so that we get data that's high confidence and believable. How do we do that? The first thing we did, we have the resident at the center. The next thing we did, we asked them about their first experience. That first experience is a story about trusting anything. What did you trust? What's the last time you trusted something? Well, I had to apply for citizenship. Bring it on. Let's talk about it. I'm like, I don't want to hear it, but tell me about it. So tell me about how you applied for citizenship. How did you have to trust the process? How did you know what was going on? What was going on? All these questions. They can tell us their entire story. Great. Has nothing to do with the city of Boston. Then I talk about the city of Boston. Okay, hey, tell me about a time you had to trust the city of Boston. Let's go into our world for a little bit. So they tell me that story. And then I ask them about the ideal. How would you like to trust? What would make it better? What would make you want to trust more? And by doing that, I talk about what trust could be. This is a really common approach used by sociologists. It's called a social graph. And you can use a social graph for so many different things. By the way, if anybody's interested, it was literally an 11 by 17 paper that I put in between myself and the participant, and they fill it out with me. It's a collaborative exercise. It's really sneaky because they get to do note-taking as well. But it's awesome because we get a chance to hear their thoughts and they get a chance to hear ours. So my goal here, use activity-based protocols. Can't stress this one enough to generate stories. And the other half of this is the team has to listen in. They're not requested to. The pleasure of your attendance is requested, none of that. In order for me to do my job better as a researcher, this is the effort that's required of you. Somebody from your team has to sit in. Even if you listen to 1 or 2, it doesn't matter. You have to participate in this effort. It is part of the process. And that is something we have to stress. I hear it all the time. Well, this person says they don't want to do it. Well, then you're not letting me do my job properly, and you're a bit of an obstacle, so we need to chat. I know. Did I say I was nice? I didn't say that in the beginning. I know I didn't. I was very careful never to say I'm a nice person. But you've got to get your horns out. You have to. Own that ground. Otherwise, they'll push you in the corner. So keep in mind, if everybody participates, they actually end up happier. It's sort of like when you have to drag your kids out and they're like, oh, I don't want to go, I don't want to go. And then suddenly they go and they're like, that was awesome. That's sort of the moment that ends up happening. Make it happen. Be the tough parent. So the norm, next one, we'll keep moving forward. Now we have to think about analysis. We've gotten all this data. Researchers now are going to be very much compelled to quantify the qualitative data. How many of you are asked to do that? Take qualitative data, and you got to go 5 out of 7 people said this. 30% of the people said this, even though there was only 5 people. I can't do math. Everybody who knows me knows I'm math challenged. I'll be like, 30% of 5, 30% of 5. I can't do it, right? So what does that actually mean? You're actually ruining the data. It's qualitative data. It's not meant to be quantified. That's what quantitative data does, and they do it well, and we need them. But this is not quantitative. This is all about qualitative. So what we have to do is think about how to describe trust and confidence and what all we've learned. This is definitely simplifying it a little bit, but maybe that's story 1. That person might tell you, well, when it's something new, I sort of prefer personal guidance from my son. He gives me one answer, and then often I need nothing else, and that's why I trust that process. Okay. Maybe story 2, the Facebook group I belong to has someone who makes sense of what it is that the city actually puts out there, and I trust that group. We heard this from Russian and Vietnamese populations. We heard this from all sorts of people. Now you notice when you have 1 dot, it's very weak. When you have 2 dots, it creates a line. A line is a nice structure, right? But what if we had 3 dots? What if we had another story about the ideal? I wish, ... It was presented to me in a certain way. And then we have shape. We like it when data takes shape. When data takes shape, it starts to become stronger. Now, you might go, well, isn't that sort of wanting quantitative in qualitative? One could say it that way, but that's not the point. It's the fact that you've given that person time to really dwell in that moment and go deeper and think about, yeah, what do I do when I trust? Okay, and it's not just the answer that my friend here on the left that I asked him, how do you trust? He just blurts something out and I go, he answered it, let's move on, right? We're thinking about this. We're letting people sort of soak into it a little bit more. We need that. Instead, what starts to come back are ways to describe trust. It has to be credible. It has to be timely. It has to be accurate. It has to be comprehensive. I've taken one word now and I've blown it open. Again, this is a very small snippet of something to consider, but you're now describing that variety in trust. You're now opening it up to a moment that actually starts to make more sense. And designers can understand this. They can look at this and go, oh, so it has to be reliable. Okay, or it has to make sure that the seam information is everywhere. I can do that as a designer. I know how to do that. It's pretty straightforward, right? Oh my gosh, maybe that's what's messing them up. Oh, we didn't even notice that these pages are different from these pages and they actually give different information. Whoa. So things that you can actually act on, which makes it so much better. It's also very interesting. We had quotes from people who were really more about the answer than they were about the process. It was all about get me to where I need to go. I don't need to see all the stuff in the middle. This is a population that isn't English speaking first. So they're thinking about some of these, I just want to get there, just get me there, please. Reduce the pain. That makes me want to trust you more. Don't reduce rich data to numbers. Please, I beg of you, don't do it. Anybody who knows me will say I'm much stronger with the language that I use. Please don't do it. It just basically devalues the quality of data that we have. We can do better. And it's okay when not everything has a number. I don't go up to people and say, I'm 5'6" and I weigh this much and I'm this old. And I don't talk about myself in terms of numbers. I don't think any one of us introduces ourselves that way. There's no need to go down that path. And the key is that variety is ultimately going to provide inspiration to the team in more ways than you can count. Finally, apply. Our resident, basically, they were able to deconstruct all of the details. And what often happens here is that they struggle with the fact that, oh my gosh, you know what? We actually now have this. Now what do we do with this? That sort of all goes away. Everybody knows what to do. In fact, pretty much at phase 4, when we've talked through the analysis and they've been there with us, because whoever listened to stories also has to participate in analysis, we all sit down together and we have to pull it together. It's not just the burden on the research team at that point, it's everybody's responsibility to tell the story. So we have all of these details, and what that basically yielded was high confidence for the design team to answer, how can the city of Boston actually generate a website full of trust and confidence? And again, like I said, this is a very small, streamlined version. There's so much more around this, but you have to take it step by step and make meaning of this. It's incredibly important. Our goal to socialize and to leverage that human story, we have to do that, and it's our responsibility so that whatever we put out to the world creates meaning. None of us go to work. I can put my signature down on this one. None of us go to work going, I'm going to create shit today. I'm just not going to create anything. In fact, I'm going to feel so good about it, I'm going to come home and be like, yeah. Right? None of us feel that way. So why set people up for failure? Sometimes you got to push back. If there's a better way, and you go home going, I actually helped a population to access really important information. Sometimes this is important information. It sounds silly, but the City of Boston parking is obscenely difficult, and you have to move your car from one side to the other in the middle of snowstorms because the snowplow has to come through. But if you're not on it, they'll tow your car. Just think about the person who is struggling, who's trying to get to work. They go out, they got the family ready, they run out, and the car's missing. You could make somebody's life better because things are timely and trustworthy, and they actually get that information when they need it. We do have the ability to make an impact. I don't care what discipline you're in. I don't care what company you're in. We have the ability to make an impact on somebody's life, on many people's lives sometimes. But even if it's just one, it's a great start. So, I think about some of the talks that came yesterday. Katie, said this about emphasizing connection: it creates an innate sense of calm in humans. Think about what Rama said. Stop thinking about technology and start talking to people. Human first, design second. I didn't put quotes around these because I wish I could have actually captured the quote, but I don't type nor do I write fast enough. Thomas, you have to think about how people consume information. It makes a difference. Farai, I took his talk and I interpret it as having agency. The most important thing, have agency in what you do. I think even as a researcher, have agency in what you do. Own that process. You are a researcher. You are doing this for a reason. Do it well, because it's part of your journey. It's part of where you're going. See things through. And the last person I call it is a guy named Behzoud Serjani. I also met him at User Research London, which was packed with great research talks. But he said something that I say all the time, yet he used different language, and I wanted to share this here, which is don't only overemphasize the act of doing research, take up the responsibility of being a researcher. Your job is to guide teams toward knowledge, not just be gatekeepers. And I thought that was a very nice way of saying it. I really appreciate coming to conferences because I get to hear people say the same message that I do, but they use different language, and sometimes that language just resonates. It makes a difference. So I wanted to share that with you. I also connected here, I'll put my slides up for sure, but I connected here to his newsletter because he really went into this discussion quite a bit in his newsletter. So to close us all off, the City of Boston really confidently incorporated human stories to improve its services to residences. It felt very, very good about the way it did this. It was a shift, just for anybody who's wondering, government, no money, and government, all quantitative. This was a real shift for the City of Boston to start pivoting and thinking, how can we do a better job of this? How can we listen to people better? How can we create more connection? Our current mayor is, after many, many years of not having a woman mayor nor a non-white mayor, we have an Asian mayor. She is very astute at trying to connect with people. I commend her for that, but this is now even more important for her. So she is just like, yeah, like, I'm behind you guys. Let's do this the right way. So we think about these details and we think about how we can actually impact everybody better. I ask you, is good enough good enough? I mean, do you feel good about it? Or do you think differently maybe? I hope so, because I'm going to ask all of you. It's all of our responsibility to do this. Whether you're a researcher or not, we have to think about that human story. We have to include it in everything we do. It has to guide whatever it is that we're putting together. So I ask you, think about, especially my researchers, position those qualitative research activities so you make sure you're creating confidence, you're creating connection, and you actually think about it through structure and transparency. You all know that if somebody presents something to you and you feel marginally good about it, or you start to have some idea of what's going on, even if it's just quick touch points, or you even get a sense to participate a little bit, you suddenly start to understand what's going on and you feel less foreign, and it's not like you want to put your hands up and go, what the hell's going on here? We all know with a little bit of transparency can come a lot of connection. It doesn't take a lot, guys, but the easy path is to just say, throw it to the designers, which is really unfair. I keep protecting my designers. So the quick takeaway, reveal the work, have a language, unpack the question, create study design transparency, leverage activity-based interactions, set team expectation that they must listen. Don't reduce data to numbers. Do you like how I slowed down on that one? Weave in the human story. Our mantra is always own it and organize it. So we ask you guys to think about how you can impact your own work this way. Thank you so much, guys.
Amazing. Thank you so much for the talk. We have time for 3 questions. So I'll give you a sec. And we can go. How can we balance truly knowing our users with speed and iteration towards an excellent experience? So how do you balance speed with basically quality of research?
Speed, right? You said
Yeah.
speed? Yeah.
You can
How
see
do you
the questions there.
balance oh.
Yep.
Excuse me for
It's
a second. Of course. How do we balance okay, blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry, I have to read questions like 10 times. I'm so slow. Yes. So if any of you are thinking like in terms of like agile, right? What you want to do is unpack the questions earlier on, because the question, you know, you're like, if I can talk in terms of sprints, I don't know if it's fair to do that, but if I can talk in terms of sprints, you know your design sprints, you know what's going on. Let's say you know that it's going to start in June of a year, like you know it's going to happen at a particular time, because there's often a time scale to that. What you want to do is, it's just a matter of planning. Start asking and unpacking those questions 2 months before. It's, again, the responsibility of the people who know that's coming up, who have to get the answers, rather than do it May 31st, you're going to actually start it in April, so that you can get ahead and you can stay ahead. So if you can think of it as, you know, if this is design and this is research, they're always going to be a bit of a gap, and they're just going to keep moving like this. Does that make sense? All right?
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's go with the next one. So do you suggest having a dedicated person in the team doing the research, or can a product designer do it as part of their tasks?
I am so sorry. I know you're not going to like this answer. I apologize in advance. I'm not a fan of the UX unicorn. I am not a fan of people who do design and research, and I'll tell you why. Researchers listen unabashedly. They listen to everything. They listen. Designers, and don't get me wrong, because that's your job, you want to solve. What happens when you listen and solve at the same time? You don't listen. You actually start solving before the story's done. And I'm sorry to say, I've seen it, time and time again. And literally, the designer will miss half of the listening. So when you have researchers who are really there to focus on listening and just take in that story, and that is their job, they will listen so well. And it is a skill. With no disrespect, I don't go and say, oh, you know what, designer? I'm going to come and design with you today, because I can pick it up. Doesn't work that way, guys. I also don't do that for code. I don't go and sit down and go, I think your code is actually wrong here, because we do this a better way. No. We've got to respect the integrity of all of these professions. So I definitely have an opinion about this. Some of you might disagree. If you're a small company, though, and you say, well, Meena, we only have so many heads, or we only have so many people, we don't have the headcount for a research team, what you need is one researcher who can own the process. But as I mentioned, everybody has to get involved. They drive the process, but everybody has to listen, everybody has to participate, everybody has to give ideas. Who do you think we should talk to? Should it just be City of Boston residents? Maybe we should be talking to the residents of Budapest. Maybe we should be talking to somebody else to see how other people trust. Is there anything like that this is where the team has ideas, but ultimately the researcher is the owner of that process. If you have more than one researcher, obviously that's going to be very helpful, but it is always a team effort. Even if you have one singular researcher, you want to make sure that they are, I think of it sort of like the rallying cry to get everybody together, but they own and they have the responsibility of owning that process.
Amazing. More power to the researchers. Last question. Stories are powerful, but they can be challenged as anecdotal evidence. How to bridge the gap between statistically relevant data and stories?
Absolutely. That's fair. But here's the thing. Unfortunately, even if we think about statistically relevant data, it's amazing what people can do with statistically relevant data and make it anecdotal or make it some bullshit. So between friends, it goes both ways. Here's the thing, though. What we like to do is whenever we are, like, for example, with the City of Boston, if we had these elements of trust, what we ended up doing, if anybody's interested, is we took those elements that I talked about in terms of timely and comprehensiveness and relevant and all this stuff. And what we did was we sort of created a wheel out of it. And in order to be able to create that wheel, we were able to give emphasis to certain ones in certain communities. To some communities, some things were more interesting, some things were less interesting. What you do is you can take that qualitative data, because it really describes, And then you can go out and you can ask quantitatively, how do you feel about this? Like, do you feel, what is your sort of, how strongly do you feel about these statements? And you can put statements out that make it a lot easier for them to go, yeah, like that is really what I'm trying to say. You put into words what I'm trying to say instead of just going, a Likert scale and you end up somewhere in the middle and you're a 3 out of 10, which doesn't mean much to me. So it brings a lot more value to the anecdotal data, but don't forget with anecdotal, you're not looking for numbers. I feel like it still tries to pull us back towards numbers. What you want is that variety to inspire your people internally. Inspiration is a funny thing, guys. It's binary. You either are inspired or you're not. So anecdotally, it doesn't matter. What you need to give the design team is inspiration. So if they hear a story and it inspires them toward a solution, it's actually already done its job. I want you to, that's a deep one, but I'm going to get you to think about that a little bit more deeply. It actually has already done its job. Because the designer, I never said the designers weren't capable. Once they get a little flash, they can go running. So that is the way you can sort of balance both sides.
Amazing, thank you. And I will just read one more from
Sure.
Slido. Just kudos for reflections on previous Amuse talks and creating a powerful message.
That's so kind. Thank you
so much. And I just want to give you a small gift of appreciation from the organizers. So thank you.